Right now it is time for This Week in the Lakeville Journal. I do believe on the line we have Cynthia Hoswinter. Cynthia, good morning.
Good morning.
And Janet Manko is there as well.
Hello.
Hello, how are you, Janet?
Good. How is everybody?
I think we're all fine. And, I kind of feel even more fine because it feels like spring looking at all the color on the front page of the Lakeville Journal.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
It's very lively. And I have to say, normally this is a very quiet time of year. And boy, for better or worse, we have a lot of news this week. Some of it really positive and upbeat for the region. I think the story that has been going on, well, they've actually all been going on for quite a while, but the Nature Conservancy has been a very big issue in Salisbury, their protection of an easement, which was a question that made people anxious in the area about whether land trusts and conservancies were going to step up to protect easements that had been put in place, often decades ago. And I think the Nature Conservancy really did a great job of quietly collecting facts and talking to parties involved, and then came out actually in a letter to Janet last week saying that they are going to honor the easement and very specifically laying out the ways that they're planning to protect some land in Salisbury in the Twin Lakes that Mary Alice White had put into protection 30 years ago. So we're all happy to see the outcome on that, and hoping that some good things will continue to happen on that property.
I think what the bad thing that happened with this whole story is that the Nature Conservancy got dinged a little. Do you know what I mean? Their reputation kind of was brought into question, and now this brings it back into tax. I mean, that was an unintended consequence, I think, of what happened. Nobody intended for that to happen, but I do believe it dinged them a little bit. I
feel like it's a very anxious time right now, and I think that they might have done a better job of stepping up earlier and just saying, here's what we're seeing. And their initial comments when people were contacting them, including the children of the woman who created the easement, was, we don't have an application, we don't know anything about it, when it was clear that they did know that there was an application. I mean, there wasn't an application, but they had been in conversation with the property owner and the property owner's representative. So that was making people anxious in a way that they might have been able to get ahead of that a little better. But I do feel like they did step up in a really meaningful way, and that the children of Mary Alice White have also said, we were anxious about this, and we really do feel the Nature Conservancy has done the right thing. And they very specifically said in their comments in our article by Deborah Alexinas, we really feel like there was a moment when people weren't certain if their conservation easements would be protected, but we do feel now that they are going to be protected.
All right, some other stories, and the Salisbury Pharmacy stopping their prescriptions, and the Salisbury General Store just becoming a general store, and those prescriptions going to New York State. I know that we just got a ton of text messages and emails on that, and spoke to not only the owner but people who were concerned. Main concern initially of people were people who had certain prescriptions that could not be filled out of state.
Especially people that were on Husky and some of the state plans.
Also, yeah.
Very important. And I'm not quite sure why Salisbury transferred everything to New York State, because, of course, we have Sharon Pharmacy, which is excellent, and we have Walgreens in North Canaan, which is actually a very good pharmacy. So I think that people had to go through a lot of grief and heartache to get their prescriptions properly transferred. But again, this is, even though it was on short notice and the people who had these prescriptions found out very suddenly that they would have to make these new arrangements, this again is a story that was building for many, many years, where Elaine LaRoche had owned several pharmacies. She owned the one in Kent, the one in North Canaan, and the one in Salisbury. She had sold the one in Kent to the pharmacist, Peter DePriel. She had sold the one in North Canaan, which subsequently closed. And she had maintained the Salisbury pharmacy, but had very clearly indicated that for her, a big part of that store was more of a general store, which she actually had changed the name of the pharmacy to the Salisbury General Store. And Peter DePriel had taken over ownership of that at the end of Elaine's life and has been running it. And unfortunately, the low volume, as Peter explained, at that pharmacy made it impossible. And, we do sometimes see this, that these insurance plans don't really help out small-town purveyors of health care. But I think people need to keep in mind Sharon Pharmacy, excellent pharmacy, the Kent pharmacy that also Peter owns down in Kent.
Yeah. When I spoke to Peter, the people complained that, well, why did he sell it? So, well, CVS paid the most money for it, and you know what? The guy has his house. He mortgaged his life to own these pharmacies. And I think it's kind of cool that he kept it as a general store, because when I was, I brought this up, when I was a kid, we had a general store in West Cornwall. In Sharon, you had Middlebrook's General Store. It was Bierce's in West Cornwall. In Lakeville, you had the Ben Franklin 5 and Dime. I mean, general stores were a big thing years ago, and I still think they can be a driver of the small economy. So,
well, and that pharmacy used to have a soda fountain, I think, too. Was it
in the back?
Sam Whitbeck who owned it?
Yeah, in the back there was and there's still an unused restaurant location in the back of that. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I heard somebody's moving into that space, and I can't think who it is right now.
So anyway, I when you got the whole story intact, you knew.
Oh, you know what? I think it's Thornhill Flowers is moving into what used to be the coffee shop.
Coffee shop.
Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure.
All right. Then another big story, which is a huge story, and that is the movie house. Of course, the worst conditions of all. Of course, Carol lost her husband. The pandemic came in. They've been closed, and they've done such a great job of building the movie house to what it is. And now we have some people that are dedicated to continuing on and building on that.
And Carol Sadlon couldn't be happier, and that's the best news. She's happy not only because it was a big burden on her, she felt a big responsibility to the community. She's been such a big part of Millerton, even though she's a Connecticut resident, and really wanted to make sure that that movie house was in good hands. And it could have turned out very differently in this crazy world that we're in. It's hard to imagine who would want to buy a movie theater that they couldn't open yet. But 11 suitors showed up, and Carol said, you know what, any of them would have been great. Great ideas, great energy, lots of experience in different parts of the business. And she was able to pick and choose who she wanted, and she chose David Maltby and Chelsea Altman. And we give a lot of background on the two of them. But suffice it to say, David has basically grew up here. Chelsea is his partner. They both have experience in the entertainment world, but also in entertainment spaces, food spaces, and they have a lot of energy. But David is the son of Barbara Maltby from Salisbury, very well-known area resident, very experienced in the film industry, was Robert Redford's producing partner. And essentially what David said was, I have to respect what the movie house has been doing for all these years, because, he didn't say it in this way, but it's like basically his mother is going to let him hear about it if he's not programming for the community. So, but also he and Chelsea looking toward the younger people that are moving here and trying to do some events too. So in a weird way, they're looking at the pandemic as kind of an advantage in the sense that they have a few months to really do some renovations, bring their dreams to life, get that elevator in there that everybody is so eager to see, and start planning on some new programming.
All right, now we have to talk about your sappy story here, Cynthia.
I'm sappy. I love maple syrup season. It is my favorite time of year, and it's such a beautiful, old-fashioned tradition that takes an insane amount of labor. Farmers and foresters and just backyard sap makers are all out tapping the trees right now. The weather is not ideal at this moment. Normally what they like is 40-degree days with a lot of sun. They like it when there's snow on the ground, but it has to be below freezing at night. And right now it's either freezing cold day and night, or it's very warm during the day and very warm at night. So a few producers were able to get their sap going this week, but two of the big producers, which is Audubon and Sharon and the Great Mountain Forest in Norfolk and Falls Village, are not doing large-scale production this year. So people who want to buy fresh local maple syrup, Audubon is still doing its Maple Fest in a couple weeks, and they will be selling last year's syrup. Last year's syrup is just as good as this year's syrup. Every year's syrup has a slightly different character, but it's not. It's certainly tasty, sweet, and fresh. So, and lots of small producers who I'm sure will be happy to sell you their syrup if they're able to make more.
Now, when I looked at, by the way, folks, when I get we get a paper here at the station, but at home I have the digital version that I subscribe to for the Lakeville Journal, which you folks can do as well. But a story that hopped to my mind, it's a great story, and you don't know whether to credit the parents or the child. But out of Cornwall, a fifth grader had classmates raise funds to support landslide victims that happened in Alaska. I think that's just an unbelievable story.
It's an extraordinary story, and the Cheney family is an extraordinary family. I think a lot of people know Hugh Cheney, who is very active in community affairs and had been a teacher for many years at the Marvelwood School and the Salisbury School, and his beloved wife, Lynn Cheney, who died actually from the same glioblastoma that killed Robert Sadlon a couple years ago. And a year before she had developed a brain tumor, their son, Rusty, had died in a really tragic plane crash. So it's a family that's had a lot of suffering. And the children have started to move back to Cornwall, partly, I think, to be supportive of Hugh, who is like an oak tree. He's very strong and solid on his own, but very close, tight-knit family, very long tradition, history of community activity. And so his son and his wife and their children had moved here from Alaska, recently arrived, and there was this big landslide in Haines, a very small town in Alaska, and Winter Cheney had with the help of Brittany Perone, one of their teachers at Cornwall Consolidated School, they started a fundraising campaign and raised quite a bit of money to send back to landslide victims. So, as you said, a beautiful, beautiful story.
And for our folks in Kent, their streetscape project is now going into the initial stages of Phase 2.
Right, and another one of these projects that took a long time to get going. It's been multiple tenures of first electmen have worked on this. A lot of strong opinions among the populace. That's a democracy, but they are now, it's underway.
And a nice article, SCORE, once again this year offering free advice to businesses in our area.
Mark and Lauren Traeger are two of the most fascinating people I've ever met. They moved to Salisbury a few years ago. They retired here. They bought an old horse farm and transformed the barn into their beautiful home. And from the minute they put foot down in the soil, they were like, we want to help people here. So Mark is a world-class business consultant. He's worked with clients like, I think it was Burger King and Pepsi. I mean, really knows how to do it. And the two of them would walk into businesses here, and their antennae would kind of go up, and they'd say, boy, they could do a lot better if they just did X, Y, or Z simple thing. It's kind of like Gordon Ramsay when he goes into a kitchen without all the swearing and the yelling and the tears. And so they've been quietly helping people on their own, and now they've joined up with the SCORE organization in Torrington and are looking not only for businesses that would like a little guidance from everything to creating a financial plan to just little tweaks that can help bring customers in, and it's all free. And they're also looking for business owners who want to join up with SCORE and help other business owners.
And a great story to answer people who, and all that work was done on the Sharon Green, on the upper portion of the green, which has worked out perfectly. If you watched the videos at all of the town meetings, of the selectmen meeting, now when the state redoes the road in front of the town hall, we're going to have granite now there as well, and I think that's just a great decision.
It's going to be beautiful. It's going to keep cars from parking on the green, which I think that we all are guilty of having done at various times. But also, it's nice to see in a small town. You would think in a small town that things would move very quickly and smoothly, but sometimes they don't. And it's nice to see Sharon coordinating with the state and not putting in curbs and then taking out the curbs and putting the curbs back, but really saying, we're going to order the curbs, we're going to stockpile them, and then we'll work with the state when they redo that road.
Yeah, it's just a great idea, and it will complete the overall look of the green. Now, I found your story because I am into tortillas. I am into making my own. I am into making my own masa. It's part of my pandemic diet. You can make 3 tacos and for a dinner and only have about 450 calories, and they're just unbelievable. And you've got a great story on the key to a perfect tortilla.
It's steaming. It's such a simple thing. Even though this is a very long article and it looks very detailed, it's not. As Marshall's saying, tortillas are very simple. And if you have a gluten issue at all, use the corn. Corn is really delicious. It doesn't bloat you up in the same way that the flour ones. And honestly, the flour ones at the store are fine, but the corn ones are not. And I learned from Ken Dempsey, who is a PT over in North Canaan at Gear. The key is to have a little pot ready. As soon as you finish cooking them, throw them into the pot, cover it, and then they steam up so beautifully. And then you can freeze them or refrigerate them and squish avocado on them or do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, it's and you know what? Once you have a real corn tortilla and you compare it to the best flour tortilla, there's no comparison in taste. It really isn't, or health, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, so if you're interested in that, folks, it's right there on page A5. Now, Deborah Alexandros has a story about Eversource, which Mitch Gross gave us a call on, and they're offering low-income families various programs.
So Deb's got a listing of what those programs are and how you can qualify for them. But of course, go to the Eversource website, and they have all this information. And I think that people sometimes make the mistake of thinking the power company wants you to use as much electricity as you can, and that's not true. They want you to be as efficient as you can, partly because they have to get that electricity out to you. And if we're all using more electricity than they're currently producing, they have to go through the arduous process of putting more plants online and increasing the transmission lines. So they want you to be very efficient, and they have a lot of programs where they're helping you with. They helped insulate my my attic, which has been a great boon and kept a lot of heat in my house. There's so many houses in this area that are older houses where the heat just flies out of the house, and it's bad for everybody, bad for the power company, bad for the environment, bad for you. So call up Eversource, find out ways that they can help you to pay for insulation on your house and new windows, et cetera, et cetera.
And we go to, once again, Janet, just a plethora of letters this week on a lot of different topics.
It's really true. We have a letter from the owner of the property that was the subject of all the controversy over the easement, and he's talking about his side of the story, and he's saying the easement has good stewardship, etc. We have Holly Place Housing supported by another writer. We have finding support online because so many people do need support now. A nice little ditty about vaccines from Michael Kaler. Yes, the People Act. I mean, it just is fascinating what our readers like to think about, and we're pleased to have all the letters.
And now, as somebody who has hated the MyPillow guy, it's not politics. Ever since he came on air, for some reason, hate's the wrong word, but kind of just, I said, yeah, the cartoon that Peter Steiner has, I won't mention it anymore. If you're a person that feels the same way I do about the guy with MyPillows, not politically, but just about the commercials, then you'll get a kick out of the.
That's right. Yeah, Peter does think in a certain way, and boy, does he get the point across quickly with a just simple cartoon. So yeah.
Now let's go to your
You wouldn't be tempted to buy a pillow. Let's put it that way.
No, I don't think so. Let's go to your editorial about keep wearing masks, but a better direction.
Right. It's been about a year since we've all had to go into lockdown, almost a year since we've all had to go into lockdown and figure out how to handle a pandemic. It does seem as if, with the vaccine slowly becoming more available and production being ramped up, that this could be a time where things can turn around if we behave responsibly, let's put it that way. Keep wearing masks, listen to the scientists, and maybe we can finally move forward. But this is what we talk about, and welcome anyone to weigh in on that. We also have a couple of columns, one from Lonnie Carter on the Jesuits and basketball, and from Daily Reveille on responsible approaches to affordable housing.
And just a little to go along with your editorial, actually, you have a great section for the love of your health that is right opposite that editorial page.
That's right. And, this time last year, we were all thinking about how to be able to stay healthy in the middle of all of this. And we have lots of advertising in this section from camps and from wellness businesses, and look through, support them. They've made it through the pandemic, which is great. And there are so many options to make yourself feel well. Outside of simple health care, but all kinds of things you can do, and you'll see that in this section.
All right, and we can move on to Compass, because I like the article by Off the Beaten Path, the streaming, and talking about let them all talk. I mean, streaming has saved my life over the past year.
You and everybody.
I mean,
right.
with the horrible news and everything like that, it really has, and it's opened up my viewing habits to places I never expected they would go.
You can travel all over the world on Zoom and on on the internet these days. There's so much interesting stuff. And Ed Furman, who is a retiree who lives in Cornwall and is a publishing guy, had emailed and said, you should do some more stories on streaming and movie reviews. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll see if I can find somebody to do that. And he said, no, I'll do one. So he wrote this wonderful column that really appeals to both age groups. One is a very talked about show. It's called Pen 15, but I think it's really Penis. And it's these two women in their 30s who are acting as though they're 7th graders, and all the other actors and actresses in the show are actual 7th graders. And it's talking about sort of from a 30-year-old's point of view, all the things that you go through when you're in 7th grade. So, obviously of most interest to young people, but interesting to Ed and his wife. But also, for those of us in the upper category, and for everybody, Meryl Streep, our local favorite actress, has a new show about with the Cornwall resident Dan Allgrant, who I think is the grandson or the nephew of Rose Allgrant of the famous art show, and it's about a cruise and hilarity and complications ensue. And we also have a great story by Alexander Wilburn, who Alex is he's got beautiful taste, and he's not fancy about it. He's a guy that can do an IKEA hack as well as anybody, and he did a wonderful interview with Darren Hinault, who owns a new decorating shop at that funny corner where there used to always be like little knick-knack shops and funny little furniture stores. And I think that if anybody can bring off a really successful store, it's going to be Darren, who, as you can see from the photo, is very, very handsome and very stylish. And like Alex, just incredibly nice and fun and smart and interesting to talk to. And Darren is actually moving the office of his very successful decorating business into that Amenia space, which is catty corner from Four Brothers of Amenia. So Darren will actually be there most of the time. So there's not only beautiful stuff for sale in there, but you can actually talk to Darren, which is one of the great delights of life. So long, interesting interview on that. And then we have, another decorating story. Ventford Hall up in Massachusetts is doing a history on interior design, and the very famous firm of Colfax and Fowler, and of course that's a photo of the famous Yellow Room, which is not yellow, it's in black and white, but very interesting story. Sharon Playhouse is doing a festival where they're calling for 10-minute plays written by people from the area. Read on for information on how to enter, and also learn how to enter the Kent Memorial Library's annual Peeps Diorama Contest. I love Peeps, and I love libraries, so it's a great thing. Combination. I realize now that there were some caterpillars that I should have been more protective of in my garden, and so we have photos of 2 caterpillars that are going to turn into beautiful butterflies if you just don't blow it. They like my parsley. And Patrick Sullivan writing about weird, odd movies, which is his favorite thing to do.
And when you go back to your streaming story, how important it is. I saw a documentary streaming on the man who saved the planet. It was a Russian commander in the 1980s, folks, not a long time ago. Their computer systems showed a launch from the United States 5 missiles. Ooh. Everybody from the top on down wanted him to retaliate right away. He didn't. And it turned out to be a computer error on their side, and basically his decision saved the world from a nuclear war. It's such a great documentary. Those are the things that have opened up that I've started to watch. I consider myself a person who's pretty aware. I was never aware of that story at all.
Yes. Wasn't that like Failsafe? Isn't that the plot of Failsafe, the movie from the 50s? Where they turn the key and then they're like, no, it was a mistake. It was a mistake, and they can't turn the planes back.
Believe me, this has happened more. There's a.
It's an outstanding story, and the guy is still alive, and all he wanted to do when he came to the United States to be interviewed at the United Nations was to meet Kevin Costner.
Oh, nice. What streaming service was it on?
And Costner set the whole thing up. It's just, and you can find it. It's on Amazon Prime, but you can just do a search, "The Man Who Saved the World," and it's part of this. Hey, I watch documentaries now, folks. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I watch documentaries now.
You should send us a list of your 3 favorites. We're collecting streaming from people. Patrick's writing about one, Bruce Paddock's writing one. So if you want to write down 3 or 4 of them, send them to me. We'll put them in the paper.
We'll do it. All right, that's the Lakeville Journal and the Millerton News, available, of course, online, tricornernews.com. Also home delivery and at your newsstands. Guys, we'll speak to you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is this week in the Lakeville Journal, as we said, tricornernews.com.